जय जय गुरुदेव 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 जय जय गुरुदेव। जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तरशत श्री श्रीमद् अभय चरणारविंद His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Ashtotrashata Shri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Gopinath Bhagwan Ki Jai Shri Shri Jagannath Baldev Subhadra Maharani Ki Jai Shri Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga Nitai Gaur Premanande. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet. Nashtaprayeshva Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna. Welcome everyone to this morning's Srimad Bhagavatam class. So today we are reading from Canto 3, Chapter 27, text number 25. The chapter is titled Understanding Material Nature. So let's repeat. Yata hya pratibuddhasya Yata hya pratibuddhasya Prasvapo bhagvanartabhrit Prasvapo bhagvanartabhrit Sa eva pratibuddhasya Sa eva pratibuddhasya Na vai mohaya kalpate Na vai mohaya kalpate Yata hi Pratibuddhasya Prasvapo bhagvanartabhrit Sa eva pratibuddhasya Na vai mohaya kalpate Yata hi apratibuddhasya Prasvapo Bhakvanartabhrit Saeva Pratibuddhasya Navai Mohaya Kalpate Navai Mohaya Kalpate Yatahi Apratibuddhasya Upapanartabhrit Mohaya Kalpate. Vaishnavis. Okay. Okay. All right. Let's repeat the word-to-word meaning. Yatha, as, he, indeed, apratibuddhasya, of one who is sleeping, prasvapaha, the dream, bahu anartabhrit, bearing many inauspicious things, saha eva, that very dream, pratibuddhasya, of one who is awake, na, not, why, certainly, mohaya, for bewildering, kalpate, is capable. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. In the dreaming state, one's consciousness is almost covered, and one sees many inauspicious things. But when he is awakened and fully conscious, such inauspicious things cannot bewilder him. Please repeat. In the dreaming state, one's consciousness is almost covered, and one sees many inauspicious things. But when he is awakened and fully conscious, such inauspicious things cannot bewilder him. Let's hear the purport. In the condition of dreaming, when one's consciousness is almost covered, one may see many unfavorable things which cause disturbance or anxiety. But upon awakening, although he remembers what happened in the dream, he is not disturbed. Similarly, the position of self-realization or understanding of one's real relationship with the Supreme Lord makes one completely satisfied. And the three modes of material nature, which are the cause of all disturbances, cannot affect him. In contaminated consciousness, one sees everything to be for his own enjoyment. But in pure consciousness or Krishna consciousness, he sees that everything exists for the enjoyment of the Supreme Enjoyer. That is the difference between the dream state and wakefulness. The state of contaminated consciousness is compared to dream consciousness, and Krishna consciousness is compared to the awakened stage of life. Actually, as stated in Bhagavad Gita, the only absolute enjoyer is Krishna. One who can understand that Krishna is the proprietor of all the three worlds and that he is the friend of everyone, is peaceful and independent. As long as a conditioned soul does not have this knowledge, he wants to be the enjoyer of everything. He wants to become a humanitarian or philanthropist and open hospitals and schools for his fellow human beings. This is all illusion, for one cannot benefit anyone by such material activities. If one wishes to benefit his fellow brother, he must awaken his dormant Krishna consciousness. The Krishna conscious position is that of Pratibuddha, which means pure consciousness. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Let's do Mangalacharan. Om Ajnanatirmirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Ena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Ena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gurum Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Bhuter Mahadbir Yaima Puro Vibhu Nirmaya Shethe Yadamoshu Purusha Bhunkter Gunam Shodasha Satmaka Solang Krashishta Bhagavan Vachamsi Me. Shri Krishna Sharanam Sharanagatam Katha Amritam Satatapibatam Bhakti Vedanta Marga Panktanam Sarvaloka Rishi Deva Janna Prasannam Sarvaloka Rishi Deva Janna Prasannam. Hare Krishna. So welcome again to this morning's Srimad Bhagavatam class. So we are hearing this very beautiful conversation between Mother Devahuti and Kapila Muni. So we are continuing to hear the wonderful questions and the answers. So these questions are not ordinary, what Mother Devahuti is asking. So she is asking very intelligent questions and very important questions that are highly significant for one's spiritual journey. That touches our soul. So it is not just at the level of the mental or the intellectual plane, but it goes much deeper and it touches our spiritual life, which is the essence of our entire being. So that is why these questions are very important. So, just a few verses before, we heard Mother Devahuti asking Kapila Muni. So, what did she say? Purusham prakritir brahman na vimunchati karhichit anyonya pashrayatvacha nityatvad anayo prabho. So Mother Devahuti asks, my dear Brahmana, does material nature ever give release to the spirit soul? Since one is attracted to the other eternally, how is their separation possible? So Mother Devahuti is saying that material nature and the jiva, they are so very closely connected that how is it possible for one to detach oneself from that attraction? How is it possible for the soul to get freedom? How is it possible for the soul to completely go towards Krishna? And she is giving an example as well. So what does she say? Just as there is no existence of the earth without the aroma. So as soon as we think of the earth or the plants or flowers, trees, there is always some fragrance coming from them. So that aroma is constantly attached with earth. And then she says, just as the water and taste. So we know that when we drink water, there is always taste. And Krishna says that he is the taste in the water as well. So just as water and the taste are so connected. Similarly, intelligence and consciousness, even they are so connected. And we know that intelligence is one of the subtle body that covers us. That is mind, intelligence, false ego. All this is also part of the elements of material nature that is covering us. So when there is such a close connection, how is it possible to come out of this influence? How is it possible to come out of this strong influence of the material nature upon us? So in response to that, Kapila Muni says, so what does he first say immediately? With the pure mind, by executing one's prescribed duties and by hearing about the Lord or hearing from him for a long time, one can be freed from the influence of matter. So what does Kapila Muni say? Animitta nimittena swadharmena malatmana tivraya mai bhaktya cha shruta sambhrataya chiram. So he says that simply by discharging our prescribed duties according to whatever situation we are placed in, whatever is our position. So that day even Devamrit Swami Maharaj was saying, it doesn't matter, what ashram you're in or what, varna you're in, all these things, whether male body, female body, all these things doesn't matter. What matters is how we serve the Supreme Lord in whatever position we are in. Sthane sthita, it is said in Bhagavatam as well. So Kapila Muni says that simply by doing our duties and by hearing about Krishna, Krishna Katha, and by hearing from Krishna, that is the instructions of the Supreme Lord, which we hear in Bhagavad Gita. So by constant hearing of all this, what happens? The sound vibrations, it goes into our ears. Ase shrute kshitapato nanunata pumsa. So the sound vibrations goes and it cleanses our heart. of all our material desires. So Kapila Muni says that simply by doing this, there will be no reaction, that is animitta nimittena. Animitta means causeless, and nimittena, something that has a cause. So without desiring any fruitive results for our activities, we are not expecting, when I do this, I want this to happen. So without expecting anything, when we keep serving the Lord, one will be freed from matter. And here, Srila Sridhar Swami, he also says that simply by association with material nature itself is not a big thing. That is not our greatest difficulty. Just as like we have the police department. Now, if somebody is, say, associated with the police department, does it mean that that person is a criminal? For all that matter, that person might be the police officer, isn't it? So, we can use material nature in the service of Krishna. And that is why Krishna has even created material nature, Prakriti, so that we can engage Prakriti in the service of Krishna, rather than getting scared or afraid of material nature. But what we have to be afraid of is the modes of material nature that affect us. That is Sattva, Rajas and Tamas, the three gunas. And we were also hearing during Narsim Chaturdashi that Prahlad Maharaj, he says, what I'm really afraid of is the association with materialistic people, because that is what can stumble us on our devotional path. So material association, that is anything that is not connected to Krishna, and anything that will prevent us from serving Krishna. So these are the things that we have to aim to detach ourselves from. So Kapila Muni says it's simply by practicing bhakti intensely, tivrena bhakti yogena, one can be freed from, that is, matter. And in yesterday's verse, we saw that as soon as one gives up this propensity to enjoy, that everything is for my pleasure, when we realize the faultiness in that understanding, when we realize that everything in this world is for Krishna's pleasure, he is the supreme enjoyer. The minute we understand that, what happens? A person becomes joyful in his position. Susukham kartum avyayat. Rajavidya rajaguhyam pavitram idam uttamam pratyaksha vigamam dharmyam susukham kartum avyayat. So whatever this knowledge that we are receiving, our activities, everything, when it is engaged for Krishna's pleasure, then what happens? A person who has that understanding is joyful. He is not disturbed by anything. And sorry? Yes, absolutely. Very true. Absolutely. Thank you, Mataji, for sharing that. So that brings us to today's verse, where the theme is about being fully conscious or Krishna conscious and being awake. So what does Srila Prabhupada explain in today's purport? So he's saying that when a devotee is awakened and when we engage in devotional service with full vigor, then the disturbances of material nature, it cannot affect us. Now, material problems will be there because we are living in this material world. So to think that everything around me is going to be perfect is a wrong understanding. There is going to be some problem or the other. But what happens is, when we understand that Krishna is the controller, He is in charge, everything is for Krishna's pleasure, and I am simply here as an instrument to act for Krishna's pleasure. Then when we do that, what happens? We tolerate any difficulties that come to us. And also, we don't become too overjoyed when there is some extreme pleasure. So we are not oscillating between these two polarities. We do not become too extremely happy when something, some situation changes in our life, nor do we become too distressed when any difficulties affect us. We just remain calm and neutral in any situation. So that is really being Krishna conscious, because we understand that Krishna is managing this situation for me, and whatever I'm doing, it is for Krishna's pleasure. So here the example is given of a dream. So in a dream, that is aprathibuddhasya. Now what happens? Sometimes we get a nightmare, isn't it? Has anyone had nightmares here? Yeah, sometimes it happens. Even I've had nightmares sometimes, and I'll be screaming, or sometimes you just say, for example, I would just be calling out to my mother's name. Or once I realized, actually in the dream, I was saying Krishna, 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 Krishna. And then I just woke up, and then I was like, okay, what is this? I'm just sleeping. And then, how did this happen? So even without us realizing what is happening, in our dreams, we get so many different experiences. It can be positive and it can be negative. Sometimes I've felt as if somebody is chasing, and then, as if I'm running, like that. So things like that, it can happen, and it can make us feel so disturbed in a dream. But as soon as we wake up, we might remember the dream, but we are not disturbed by what happened in the dream, because we realize that it was just a dream, it was just momentary, it had to disappear. And now my real position is, okay, I'm here. It's a nice day, it's morning, I'm up and running, I'm getting on to my work. So, like that, what Srila Prabhupada is explaining is that what is this dream state? When we think that we are the enjoyers, that is the state of being in a dream. Because everything around us is temporary. But then we think that, we are enjoying. This is, all mine. But as soon as we are awakened to our real position as a servant of Krishna, as a spirit soul, as soon as we get that understanding, that is being awake. That is pratibhuddhasya. So then what happens? Anything that happens around us, it doesn't disturb us. So there may be troubles, but as we said, that it will not touch us. It will not affect us. So, for example, just, a couple of weeks back, I was just down with very high fever. And it was I couldn't even get up from my room, and I was like just so having so much body pain and this and that. And at that time, like, I felt, okay, this is really a time to think, am I this body or this soul? So then what happened when we are put in such a difficult situation, it becomes like a test. And we have to be practical as well, in the sense I cannot push myself to say, no, I am the spirit soul, so I'm going to drive for 1 hour. Doesn't matter, what happens, who cares? You can't do that. You simply can't do that, because you have to address what you are faced with at that moment. So I just had to take it easy, just sit at home. But at the same time, you're doing your chanting, listening to lectures. Then all this, what happens, it keeps one constantly connected with Krishna. Then even though that fever is there, okay, you have to rest for some time, you take your tablets, and then after 3-4 days, it goes away naturally, like you don't have to do anything extra. And in fact, I went to the doctor, and then the doctor said, no, your temperature has come down, I can't give you any antibiotics. And I said, okay. So, but then what happened? Simply by just tolerating that difficulty, that doesn't affect us to such a degree that you feel that this is the end of life. Because, when you're just by yourself and you might think like, there were stages when I felt like just crying. But somehow Krishna helps you to get past all that, because he is saying that he is with us constantly. So that is what Srila Prabhupada is saying in today's purport. When we realize that Krishna is our best friend, he is Sarva Loka Maheshwaram, Ghatir Bharta Prabhu Sakshi, Nivasa Sharanam Suhrit, Prabhava Pralayasthanam, Nidanam Bijam Avyayam. So he is Suhrit, he is our best friend. Then Krishna somehow takes care of you. So then these disturbances, they don't affect us. We can breeze through them. So we saw that even in the very first verse of this chapter, Kapila Muni was saying, Prakritistopi Purusho Najyate Prakritair Gunair Avikarad Akartritvan Nirgunatva Jalarkavat. So Kapila Muni was saying that when a living entity is thus unaffected by the modes of material nature, because he is unchanging and does not claim proprietorship, he remains apart from the reactions of the modes, although abiding in the material body, just as the sun remains aloof from its reflection on the water. So the sun is in the sky, yes, and we see the sun's reflection in the water. Now the water might be moving, and because of that it will look like as if the sun is shaking. But is the sun really shaking? No, the sun is just up there in the sky, so powerful and shining. And then the water might be cool. The temperature is so chill over there. But is the sun cool? No, the sun is just blazing hot. That is the nature of the sun. So similarly, when a devotee is practicing Krishna consciousness and when a devotee is constantly engaged in serving Krishna, then whatever disturbances happen, then even these modes of nature, they cannot disturb us, and we can remain like the sun, just like the sun is in the sky. But although all this is very easily said than done, when we are actually put in situations, we feel that the modes are just overpowering us. But at those times, we have to take the shelter of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So the more we keep chanting, what happens? We come under Krishna's internal energy. We come under the shelter of Srimati Radharani. Then Srimati Radharani gives us the strength to tolerate anything. So we have been seeing that Krishna is Bhoktaram. That is another point in the purport that Srila Prabhupada is explaining. Bhoktaram yajna tapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram Sukhrudam sarva bhutanam nyatva mam shantim richati. So once we know that Krishna is the supreme enjoyer, he is the benefactor, and he is the well-wisher of all living entities, then we attain peace. So Srila Prabhupada says that the greatest peace formula is this. That is, Lord Krishna is the beneficiary in all human activities. So can we repeat that line? Lord Krishna is the beneficiary in all human activities. So we can also try to remember this statement as a mantra. Lord Krishna is the beneficiary in all activities. So every day, maybe we can try to think about this line. You know, I'm telling myself, so I'm just sharing with everyone as well. Every day, just at some time in the day, we can think, Lord Krishna is the beneficiary in all activities. So the more we keep saying this and drilling this into our mind, then whatever we do, we will do it for Krishna's pleasure. So in connection with this, I just wanted to share an example from one of Radheshyam Prabhuji's lectures. So recently he gave a lecture on what are material pleasures and what is spiritual bliss. So there he was saying how, the happiness or the pleasures that we experience in this material life are just so temporary. And he was giving a comparison to this bliss that we derive when we serve Krishna. So he was saying that this can be at the many different levels. So first is, say, physical pleasure. So how do we experience physical pleasure? Through our body and our senses. So for example, you like to eat a gulab jamun. You put it inside your mouth and you can nicely feel the taste of the gulab jamun in your tongue. It's so sweet, it's so nice, it's so soft, everything is nice. But it's about a few minutes, and as soon as the gulab jamun goes inside, and then it becomes something else, as it goes into your digestive system. So just for those few minutes or seconds, you feel that pleasure. And then mental pleasure. Now this can last for a little longer. It can be for a few days. For example, you're listening to some very good music, some movie songs or something. It can really stay in your mind for a long time. You'll be haunted by that song. You would want to hear it again and again and again. You get so attracted to it and you enjoy listening to it. So that can last a little longer. It is not like just 1 minute or, something like that. And then intellectual pleasure. So that can be through our intelligence. So Radheshyam Prabhuji gave the example that once he solved a big mathematical equation. It was given in some book. There were like so many steps to solve an equation. And then Prabhuji, he just happened to do it in 4 steps. And then he wrote to that author and he said, I've solved this equation in just 4 steps. And then that mathematician was so happy and he appreciated Prabhuji. So Prabhuji was saying how that gave him so much happiness and, joy that, I solved this equation. So like that, something that we might do intellectually challenging and, it can again give us some pleasure or happiness. But again, that can last for a bit longer, say for, a year or even more than that. But then after that, you will realize, there are so many geniuses, there are so many people who are doing so many things much better than me. This is not just the biggest achievement. And then, that pleasure will kind of subside. You're not going to get so kicked about it. And then there is egoistic pleasure. So what is that? When it is something like a lifetime achievement. So for example, Prabhuji was saying, the person who, who climbed Mount Everest for the first time, and then he placed a flag there. It was Hillary, was it? Yeah, I think, if I'm not wrong, we can check that. So now that is a lifetime achievement and no one can change that. It stays for his entire lifetime. He can say, I'm the one who, went to Mount Everest for the first time. So like that, even we might feel something. If somebody has achieved something so significant, that pleasure can last for this whole lifetime. But what happens after that? After this lifetime, when your jiva leaves this body, that is the end of that pleasure as well. Because when your soul migrates into another body, now are we going to remember, I was the first one who went to Mount Everest first? No, it's like you are starting your life from scratch, from the baby stages. And you're not going to remember anything that we did in our previous life. So all these pleasures, their duration may vary, but they are still temporary. But the pleasure that one derives by serving Krishna, that goes for lifetime after lifetime, and even when we reach Krishna, it is eternal. So that spiritual bliss never diminishes. It is ever increasing. It is eternal. And it stays for all time to come. So for example, we come to the temple and we sing and dance in front of Radha Gopinath and we feel so happy. Now these joys, they stay with us throughout this life, and our subtle body carries it on into our next life as well. So it is said that bhakti is carried with us with our soul. So if someone has done bhakti in their previous life for say 50%, then in this life they start from 51%. So in this life, if we are trying to give our full endeavor, tivrena bhakti, we try to do 90% or 95%. We want to push, we want to aim for 100. But even if we can't aim for that 100, but whatever we are doing, in the next life, it continues on from that point that it can then propel us very quickly to Krishna. So the fact that we are all even here today is because we have done some bhakti, some sukriti in our previous life that has brought us to this stage. And in this life, we make use of our life to keep serving Krishna so that ultimately we can go back to Him. So here, when someone asks us, Prabhuji was saying that, what are you guys, you're just chanting. What is the pleasure that you're deriving in what you're doing? Prabhuji said we can give them this verse. Ramante yogino nante satyanande chidatmani iti rama padena sau param brahma bhidhiyate. So the mystics derive unlimited transcendental pleasures from the absolute truth, and therefore the supreme absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, is also known as Rama. So because Sri Krishna is all blissful, he being the supreme enjoyer, he is always blissful, and by serving the Lord, we also derive that bliss which is unlimited. Ramante means always blissful, always being joyful. And one of the names of the Lord is also Rama. And also when we chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, Rama also refers to Srimati Radharani, who is the internal pleasure-giving potency of Sri Krishna. So simply by hearing about Krishna, the joy that we experience is unlimited. It is eternal. So Vidura says to Maitreya Muni, Tadasya kausharava sharma dhatur hare katham eva katha susaram udhritya pushpebhya ivarta bandho shivayana kirtaya tirtha kirte. So here Vidura is saying that the glories of the Supreme Lord can alone do good for people all over the world. Just as bees collect honey from flowers, kindly describe the essence of all topics, the topics of the Lord. So, by developing a taste for Krishna Katha, by constantly hearing about Krishna, what happens? We can reach that stage of Pratibhuddhasya, which is what we saw in today's verse, of being awake, of being Krishna conscious all the time. So on that note, we'll hear this beautiful pastime where once Lord Krishna and Balram, they went to, they were in the forest of Vrindavana. And the Gopa friends were feeling so hungry. And Krishna Balram were also feeling hungry. So then the Gopas went to Krishna Balram and they said, oh Krishna, we are feeling so hungry, do something. So what did Krishna say? Okay, just go there. There are some Brahmanas. They are doing some sacrifice, yajna. So go and ask them for some food and they will give it to you. So the Gopas go and they told the Brahmanas who were doing the sacrifice, Krishna Balram have come, please give some food, they are hungry and we are also hungry. But the Brahmanas did not even care. They were so engrossed in their sacrifice that they just ignored these Gopa boys. They didn't bother. Then the Gopas went back to Krishna and they said, they didn't give us anything. Then Krishna said, now you go to the wives of those Brahmanas and you ask them. They will definitely give it to you. So immediately what happened? The Gopas, they went to the wives of these Brahmanas. Now these ladies, these gopis, they have heard about Krishna for a very long time, that they were so eager to see Krishna and Balram. So they got immediately excited. What? Krishna Balram have come here? Oh my God, we have to go and see them. We have to make all these nice preparations and go and see them. So there it is said, Shrutva chutam upayatam nityam taddarshanat sukhaha tatkata kshipta manaso bhabhuvurjata sambrama. So the minds of these wives of the Brahmanas were constantly absorbed in Krishna. So that is pratibhuddhasya, being awake. So as soon as they heard that Krishna Balram had come, they became so excited. So they made different preparations and they put it all in a big vessels and they took it to see Krishna Balram. And what did they see? Shyamam hiranya paridim vanamalya barha Dhatu prapala nataveshamana se Vinyasta hastamiterena dunanamabjam Karnotpalala kakapola mukhabjahasam. So Krishna was dark blue. His complexion was dark blue. And his garment was golden. He was wearing a shining yellow garment. And he was wearing a peacock feather. And colored minerals and sprigs of flower buds. And a garland of forest flowers and leaves. He was dressed just like a dramatic dancer. And he rested one hand upon the shoulder of a friend. And with the other he was twirling a lotus, and lilies graced his ears, and his hair hung down over his cheeks, and his lotus-like face was smiling. So the Brahmana's wives saw this beautiful vision of Krishna. He was dressed so beautifully and he was dancing. And he was entering Vrindavana. So, in just the next verse, Shukadev Goswami, while narrating this pastime, he says that just by hearing about Krishna, that became the ornament for the ears of these wives of the Brahmana. So, that is our real ornament, hearing Krishna Katha. So just coming to Srimad Bhagavatam, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, either in person or we hear online, whatever way, Krishna Katha becomes our real ornament. And by doing that, the wives of the Brahmanas, they just took Krishna into their heart and they embraced him within their heart. So that is again pratibhuddhasya. Simply by hearing about Krishna and by having that eagerness to see him, we can draw Krishna into our heart and we can embrace him. And like this, we can be constantly connected with Krishna. So then what happened in this pastime? The Brahmana's wives, they didn't want to leave. But then Krishna said, no, you have to go home and you have to do your duties. And I'm always there in my deity form. Now after hearing this, the Brahmanas, they felt so ashamed. Oh, Krishna and Balram were here. They are the Bhokta Ram. They are the supreme enjoyers. Now we have been doing this sacrifice for whom? Krishna Balram were there in front of us and we couldn't see them. And we didn't give the offerings to them. So then the Brahmanas felt so ashamed. So that is what? So that was being in a dreaming state. So they were not fully aware of their position. So what were they in? They were in the state of apratibhuddhasya. They were just thinking, they were doing all this sacrifice, not knowing that Krishna Balram is the supreme enjoyer who was there right in front of them. So on this note, we will end with a little song by Saint Tukharam. So Saint Tukharam says that, where does my mind go? Atha kote dhave mana. Where is my mind going once I have seen the lotus feet of Krishna? And then he says that the ananda, or the joy that I experience on seeing the Lord's lotus feet, it cannot be measured. It is only as equal to the size of Lord Vittala himself. Now, can we measure the size of Krishna? We cannot. He is so, he's so supremely, just we cannot measure him. We can't even describe him. So such is the pleasure when one is engaged in serving Krishna, when one is thinking about Krishna. So prema rase bhai sali meethi. So by tasting this love for Krishna, my mouth has become very sweet. My tongue has become sweet. It has attained the Krishna prem. And then he says that, so the essence of this song is that my mind is constantly situated at the lotus feet of Krishna, which is what we want to get to. And in today's verse, we saw about that when we are in that state of being awake, being Krishna conscious all the time, then nothing can affect us. All these material disturbances, they will just fade away. So we'll try to sing this song. Atha kote dhave man, tujhe charan dekh liya. Atha kote dhave man, tujhe charan dekh liya. Bhag gela शीण गेला, भाग गेला, शीण गेला. What this line means is, bhag gela, all my sufferings are gone. Kshin gela, all my exhaustion, my fatigue, everything is gone. Avadha jalanand. So my joy in serving Krishna is just, it is overwhelming me. It is just surrounding me. Atha kote dhave man, tujhe charan dekh liya. Prem rase भसली मीठी, प्रेम रसे भसली मीठी. आवड़ी लाठी मुखासी, आवड़ी लाठी मुखासी. आता खोटे धावे मन, तुझे चरण देख लिया. तू खमने आम जोगे, तू खमने आम जोगे. विठल घोंगे करे माप, विठल घोंगे करे माप. आता कोटे धावे मन, तुझे चरण देख लिया. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Please sing. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Gurudev ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Any questions or comments? Yes. Yeah. Yes.
In today's practical world, I saw an example that two persons, person A and person B, both having bhakti towards Krishna, devoted bhakti towards Krishna. And person A gets a fruit that person B does not. So in this example, how do we understand Krishna's love? That Krishna's love is there for both person A and person B. Or the person A is getting fruit, person B is not getting fruit.
Yes. So the question is that there are two people who are serving Krishna, and at the same time one person gets the fruit and the other doesn't. So it is said that to the extent that we surrender to Krishna, Krishna reciprocates with us. So it's just a bit like the sun is there outside shining, and the sun rays are equally present for everyone. The sun rays are equally present, whether it is outside, we go on the road, or we go into a garden, or we go into, in any open space. But say, for example, a person has closed the windows in the room, then the sun rays doesn't come inside. So they are blocking the sun rays from coming inside. Now the same person, if he just steps out of the house and goes into the outdoor space, immediately he will experience the sun rays. So like that, Krishna's love is there equally for everyone. So it is said, Ye yathamam prapadyante tamstatikshava bharata. So to the extent that one is surrendering to Krishna, Krishna reveals himself and we can experience his love. Does that answer your question? Thank you. Hare Krishna. Okay? All right. Hare Krishna.